The history of chocolate begins with cacao, from ritual to industry, and the rise of a global commodity. Chocolate is everywhere. It waits behind polished glass in boutiques lit like jewelry cases. It rests in disciplined rows beneath fluorescent supermarket lighting. It dissolves into childhood memory. It hides in gift boxes. It melts into holidays. It disappears into routine. Belgium claims refinement. Switzerland claims mastery. Single origin labels promise authenticity. Luxury promises purity. And the Isle promises something simpler, normalcy. Chocolate feels finished, smooth, stable, complete, as if it has always existed this way. But finished things do not require negotiation. Chocolate does. Every bar on that shelf represents decisions made in places you will never see. Decisions about rainfall patterns thousands of miles away. About labor conditions embedded in rural economies. About pricing signals traded in financial centers. About soil, disease, shipping routes, contracts, and currency. It feels simple because complexity has been absorbed before it reaches you. That is not the same as being simple. Long before it was wrapped in foil or molded into uniform squares, chocolate was something else entirely. It did not begin as indulgence. It began as structure. In the humid forests of Mesoamerica, cacao trees grew beneath dense canopy light. Their pods ripened slowly, splitting open to reveal pale, bitter seeds, nothing like the sweetness now associated with celebration. Among the Maya civilization, cacao was not casual. It marked hierarchy, it sealed alliances, it reinforced cosmology. Cacao appears in painted ceramic vessels excavated from royal tombs. Glyphs identify it by name. Tribute records show it moving across trade networks that stretch through present-day Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras. Trade existed. Extraction did not dominate. Value did not require scale. It required boundary. Cacao was ground by hand on stone, mixed with water, sometimes infused with chili or maize, poured between vessels until foam rose to the surface, a sign of proper preparation. It was bitter, and it was earned. Its rarity was not merely agricultural, it was cultural. Demand had limits because ritual had limits. Hierarchy shaped cacao. It did not flatten it. Cacao did not need to be everywhere to matter. Its power came from containment. Containment preserved meaning. Scale would eventually change it. By the time Hernán Cortés arrived in the court of Moctezuma II in the early 16th century, cacao already carried centuries of ritual gravity. Moctezuma was said to consume cacao from finely crafted vessels, prepared with precision. Chroniclers described its association with strength and authority. Whether embellished or not, the image endured. An emperor, a bitter drink, a substance understood as power. When Moctezuma lifted cacao to his lips, it was not dessert, it was declaration. Power touched cacao long before Europe did. That image crossed the ocean, and what crossed the ocean did not remain the same. In 1502, cacao entered the Atlantic world. It did not travel as ceremony. It traveled as cargo. Removed from ritual, cacao became interpretable. Interpretable things are negotiable. Negotiable things are scalable. In Spain, cacao entered the court of Charles V as curiosity. Monastic kitchens modified it. Sugar from Caribbean plantations was added. Heat altered its texture. Its bitterness softened. Its boundaries loosened. What Europe encountered was not just flavor, it was leverage. Rarity, outside ritual, becomes opportunity. Curiosity becomes appetite. Appetite becomes demand. And demand does not remain contained. Under Spanish colonial rule, cacao did not immediately transform into plantation geometry. First, it became obligation. The encomienda system granted colonists authority over indigenous communities under the language of protection and religious conversion. In practice, it required tribute and labor. Control is most effective when it appears procedural. Communities were assigned, production was expected, compliance was documented. Extraction does not begin loudly, it begins administratively. Labor was reorganized before it was expanded, paper before plow, ledger before expansion. Sugar plantations across the Caribbean had already demonstrated something powerful. Land could be cleared at scale, labor centralized, output standardized, profit projected before harvest. Cacao did not invent this structure, it entered it. Fields once interwoven with forest diversity were increasingly aligned for predictability. The field became geometry. Geometry does not ask why, it asks how much. But geometry alone does not create permanence. Repetition does. Ships cross the Atlantic not sporadically, but rhythmically. Harvest seasons synchronized with departure schedules. Port cities hardened into predictable corridors of trade. Credit extended against projected yield. Insurance distributed risk across investors. By the late 17th century, Atlantic trade was no longer experimental. It was systematized. Contracts anticipated harvest before it existed. Investors expected return not as possibility, but as rhythm. Rhythm reduces doubt. Doubt reduces hesitation. Hesitation reduces profit. The system no longer asked whether cacao should move. It asked how efficiently it could. The ocean did not equalize what it carried. It calculated it. Distance became insulation. Those who financed cacao rarely saw its cultivation. Those who cultivated cacao rarely influenced its price. Predictability turned novelty into expectation. Expectation turned appetite into dependency. Chocolate was no longer curiosity. It was habit, and habit is infrastructure. But systems built on expansion require stability. When soil exhausted in parts of the Caribbean, when abolition movements disrupted labor systems, when colonial stability shifted, the system did not collapse. It recalibrated. Demand does not retreat. It relocates. By the 19th century, cacao cultivation expanded into West Africa. The Gold Coast, present-day Ghana, became fertile ground. Railway lines connected inland farms to coastal ports. Infrastructure followed demand. Local farmers adopted cacao as smallholders participating in global markets. The shift appeared different from earlier plantation slavery. The structure was not gentler, it was redistributed. First, people were moved for cacao. Later, cacao was moved to where people already were. The geography changed, the leverage did not. Today, Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire produce roughly 60 to 70% of the world's cacao supply. 2 regions, 1 crop, global appetite. Concentration simplifies logistics. It simplifies contracts. It simplifies forecasting. It does not simplify vulnerability. Smallholder farmers depend on rainfall cycles, soil health, pest management, and commodity prices traded on futures markets in London and New York. Commodity markets determine value in abstractions. Farmers experience it in seasons. Capital followed concentration. In 1828, Coenraad van Houten developed a hydraulic press separating cocoa butter from cacao solids. Chocolate became smoother, more manufacturable. In Switzerland, Daniel Peter partnered with Henri Nestlé to stabilize milk chocolate. Appeal widened. In the United States, Milton Hershey industrialized chocolate for mass consumption. Chocolate became democratic. The structure behind it did not. Factories refined consistency. Brands refined identity. Packaging refined trust. In the early 20th century, William Cadbury investigated reports of coerced labor tied to cacao production in São Tomé. Public scrutiny emerged. Sourcing shifted. Exposure did not dismantle the system. It refined it. After Ghana gained independence in 1957, Kwame Nkrumah relied heavily on cocoa exports to finance national development. Cacao funded infrastructure, education, state building. dependency scales upward as well as downward. Governments established cocoa marketing boards to stabilize pricing. Stabilization requires margin. Margin is not evenly distributed. Cocoa swollen shoot virus spread across Ghana, forcing large-scale tree removal. Cacao is not industrial steel. It is biological. Biology does not scale on demand. Meanwhile, multinational firms expanded through acquisition and vertical integration. Companies such as Nestlé, Mars, Mondelez International, and Barry Callebaut shape large segments of global sourcing and manufacturing. Contracts replaced tribute, insurance replaced conquest, logistics replaced empire, but insulation remained, risk dispersed downward, control consolidated upward. The countries that grow cacao rarely control the chocolate. The chocolate that captures the highest margins rarely originates where the crop is grown. Value moves, volume remains. That is not coincidence, it is design. The chocolate aisle remains full, the lighting remains soft, the packaging still promises origin, it still feels finished. But finished things do not require constant negotiation. Chocolate does. It negotiates rainfall patterns across West Africa. It negotiates pricing signals in financial centers. It negotiates soil conditions, disease resistance, labor availability, political stability. It negotiates expectation. Expectation assumes continuity. That assumption is where the story lives. Because what feels permanent is often the result of constant motion. Chocolate did not become global because it was sweet. It became global because systems learned how to move it, finance it, insure it, standardize it, and concentrate it. And systems built for movement do not stand still. The distance between those who grow cacao and those who consume it widened over centuries. Distance obscures connection. It does not erase it. Ritual became commodity. Commodity became infrastructure. Infrastructure became assumption. And assumption is the most fragile layer of all, because assumptions only feel permanent until they are not. If you want to explore how everyday foods shape power, labor, and global systems, continue the investigation. There is more beneath the surface. And it did not begin or end with chocolate.